Hello and welcome back to the Bird's Eye View podcast. We are here shortly following Canada's 4-3 loss to Panama at the World Baseball Classic. I'm your host, Zach Worden, and with Jori off gallivanting in Miami for Pool's D action, I believe it is. I had to make a call to the bullpen for this one. It is Ian Finlayson who is joining us today. Ian, thanks so much for doing this. Really appreciate you jumping in here. Even if, the result maybe wasn't as exciting as we had maybe hoped going into this one.
Yeah, definitely disappointing outcome for Canadian baseball fans, but still more than happy to step not off the farm. I'm not a Felipe Omont situation, but glad to step in and do my third of an inning of work here and break down this disappointing outcome for Canada.
Before we get into it, you can check out Ian's work at Sportsnet, at the Jays Nation, and if you're into basketball, at Raptors Republic as well. But Ian, so I mean, obviously 4-3 loss. I think when you go back and look at this one, it's the sixth inning, right? It's the three or the couple of errors, Josh Naylor dropping the ball, James Paxton kind of shot putting a ball to the backstop that went to shortstop, and obviously the throw wasn't intended to him. Just a little bit of a sloppy game, and obviously the bats weren't able to kind of step up, which is I think what we entered the tournament thinking was going to be the calling card of this Canada team, and it just kind of you get the bad defense, you get the bats going kind of silent, and it ends up in an upset loss to this Panama team.
Yeah, it's definitely really tough to stomach, especially when you feel like the offense did have a lot of opportunities that they kind of let go by the wayside and didn't take advantage of. Like you said, the sixth inning is of course going to be the first thing that everyone talks about. Three unearned runs on a couple of really poor defensive miscues there. Josh Naylor drops a ball that you don't ever really see him or any major league first baseman drop. There's that strange play where Paxton cuts it off, and he probably just needs some PFPs, right? He's not at spring training. He's not doing this kind of stuff probably as much as other active major league pitchers. So the Canadian defense that looked so good in the first game against Colombia and just really level-headed and calm, kind of unraveling there at a bad time, and yeah, it just came back to bite them. And they end up, squandering a game that really and I think most people would agree they should have had.
Yeah, they kind of needed it too, especially, when you look around the pool, Puerto Rico 2-0, Cuba 2-0, falling to this Panama team that was coming into the game 0-2. Really it doesn't it's not the death sentence for Canada in this tournament, but it makes things really tough, right? Like now they're going to have to essentially win out or hope that, Panama comes up, or I guess it's not even Panama that comes up with the upset. They're just going to kind of have to hope for a surprise elsewhere so that they can kind of boot their way through to the knockout round, which was certainly the expectation. And, we talked about it a bunch on this podcast, like, the expectation is there for them to win this tournament and kind of falling, or not win the tournament, but, advance out of the pool. And, falling short of that would certainly be a disappointment. But, we talked about the offense too. What did you kind of make? I think top of the lineup certainly doesn't come through, right? Eddie Julian 0 for 5, Josh Naylor 0 for 4 or 1 for 4, doesn't get a hit until the ninth inning. Tyler O'Neill 0 for 3, 2 Ks, both of his Ks, one with Naylor on first in the ninth inning, and then against Miguel Cienfuegos, who I'm sure we'll get into in a little bit here, but the top of the order really not coming through is really tough for them in this game.
Yeah, I think my biggest takeaway from the offense going definitely quieter than they would have liked there is that they really should have capitalized against Jaime Barria more. Like
Yeah.
if you looked at the stuff that he was coming in with, he was throwing a lot of high 80s in the zone against really good major league players. And you look at like Abraham Toro, his double was 88 down the middle. And he did what he should have done with it, right? But then you look at some of the other opportunities. Bo Naylor flew out on a hanging slider right after that with Toro on second. In the top of the third, or bottom of the third rather, Canada up again. Edward Julian fouled a hanging slider. Josh Naylor flew out on like a middle changeup. And you can look throughout the game. There was a ton of pitches that they should have hit. Obviously, not every meatball is going to go for extra bases, but some of them got it right. So yeah, I think just not capitalizing on those opportunities that kind of just continued to cascade and Yeah, it was definitely tough. Tough sledding for the offense there. And yeah, aside from that, I mean, I think Josh Naylor, he did step up there in the ninth inning in a clutch spot, and it seemed like he really kind of put it together and got the hit Canada needed. But like you said, Tyler O'Neill strikeout in the eighth inning. They had an opportunity with runners in scoring position as well. So yeah, it's just there's going to be a few moments to definitely stick around to haunt them.
Yeah, I think too, interesting, this lineup is built on like guys who control the strike zone fairly well. And, there was only two walks from them in this game. It was seven against Colombia when they put up 8 runs. And, both of the walks today only come from Tyler O'Neill. I thought there were certainly times during the game that they got a little bit chase happy. Which is, I kind of understand, right? Like when you're the favorite in a game and you fall behind, you're going to press a little bit. You're going to try and, make stuff happen. But, you mentioned it with Berea, but there's was nobody that really came in like throwing high 90s, right? Like from this Panama bullpen. So I think, the pressing a little bit late was tough. And, I think too, the point that you're going to see on Twitter, the point that you're going to see all over is, of course, Owen Casey hitting eighth, right? He comes up with another two-hit game. He hits the big double in the eighth inning to drive in a run. And, he hits the home run yesterday. This is like a legitimate top prospect level player. He performed fairly well in the 2023 World Baseball Classic. And we talked about it last night after they beat Colombia. Like, how do you not slide that guy up in the lineup?
Yeah, it is pretty like staggering when you look at it. And I mean, coming in, I know I certainly the way I was gaming it out, I would have thought he would have been, 3, 4, 5, somewhere in
Yeah.
there. Lineup optimization can be a bit of a fallacy sometimes, right? But I mean, eighth is, you're getting more at bats at the
Yeah.
top. You have better hitters directly in front of you. There is some sensibility to it. Yeah, it's hard to say anything against Owen Casey after the way he's performed through these two games. I did think it was a bit interesting. There was two at bats, first in the bottom of the second, and then again in the sixth, where he did make a first pitch out. Denzel Clark as well with a first pitch out, and then a second pitch out,
Yeah.
all on pitches that were either kind of right on the shadow of the zone or out of the zone. So I did think there was maybe some of that rawness from Canada's young players that was rearing its head a little bit in some of those spots. But like you said, regardless of that, came up with a big hit to the deepest part of the park when Canada really needed to get something going. So yeah, putting Owen Casey in a more like optimal spot to kind of thrive and then setting him up for a bit more success there, I think would probably be ideal.
I think too, I mean, obviously the loss like it creates more frustration than if they had come back and win the game, right? Like if Jared Young, hits a double there in the ninth inning and drives in Josh Naylor and they come back to win. But, the scene of Jared Naylor, essentially striking out twice where, he fouls off the pitch in the dirt and then strikes out to end the game where, Young, like we've talked, he was a guy that I was saying, I think that he has the potential to be like an impact hitter for Canada at this tournament. But, we had that conversation in the frame of, which guys at the bottom of the order can you see stepping up and doing it, right? Not him hitting the four hole. So, for him, sliding in there for Tyler Black, Black I thought was fairly good against Colombia. He was a decent guy to kind of have in there. So I was a little bit surprised to see them make that move, but going forward here, I mean, do you expect Casey to kind of be, filling in that four hole, and what do you kind of think might kind of be the solution for that designated hitter spot in, not knowing who Puerto Rico is going to start at this point?
Yeah, I think that is the configuration that makes the most sense. Just kind of thinking about it. I mean, Jared Young hit like 18 home runs in AAA last season. I mean, this is a pretty rudimentary way to evaluate this, but Owen Casey hit 22, and he's also the burgeoning young early 20s prospect. So I think like it's safe to say there's a fair amount more upside in that profile there. Um, yeah, I would certainly imagine that you'd like to see Casey move up there. Whether that'll be the decision made, it's really hard to say based on how they've operated so far. It kind of seems like they're going with the formula they have. And yeah, it's hard to say, with Canada's left-handed heavy lineup, like based on not knowing the upcoming starter, exactly how that's going to play out. I mean, speaking of the starters, obviously Canada today announced like they've already used Tyan and Soroka
Yeah.
And then we're going to see Blazevic and also
Quantrill
Quantrill
for
coming up,
Cuba. Yeah.
against Puerto Rico and Cuba. So I was curious your opinion on Canada's like decision to deploy the starters in that fashion.
Yeah, I think that they're in like there's no hiding from the situation that they were in pitching wise entering the tournament, right? Like you miss out on Pavetta, you don't have Tong, you don't have Kate Smith, you don't have Matt Brash, you don't have Eric Zabriskie. The list goes on. But,
Yes.
at the same time, I think that they tried the Logan Allen thing against the Blue Jays. I think that we saw in that exhibition game where he struggled. So I think that kind of took him out of consideration for that game. And, Quantrill was the other veteran guy that they were going to start, I think, kind of regardless of what happened. So kind of finding that fourth starter was really interesting. And I wonder if they even changed that up, their plan here after losing this game, right? Because to me, you set up Quantrill and Blazovic for the last two games in the way of we just need to win one of these games, and maybe they felt better against Cuba, so that's why they went Quantrill for that one. But now you kind of need to win both. So do you look at it as a guy like Blazovic is kind of going to be more of an opener, or do they have like something that they feel good about for him versus Puerto Rico? Cuba is starting their ace against Canada in game four. And he's a really good pitcher in Japan. He was really good against Panama in game one. He's a lefty, which certainly plays well against Canada's lineup. So I think that Cuba game is going to be really tough, and for them to kind of set up, it's two really tough games. So um, I would be interesting to see like if they do decide to stick with Belazovic, kind of how long that they would be committed to sticking with him before you go to say, an Adam Mack or a Matt Wilkinson or a guy who can give you a little bit more length.
Yeah, and as you've outlined there, I mean, they do essentially have to win out. Like one of Puerto Rico or Cuba is going to lose a game against each other.
Yeah.
So that they're going to have one loss there between those two teams. But yeah, Canada's essentially just, gaming it out realistically, probably going to have to run the table
Yeah.
and potentially even get some run differential help as well there. So when you look at, yeah, tough matchups there, do you really want to put all the hope in Blazovic? Do you want to maybe run more of a bullpen day and really game the matchups and try to optimize everything there to the best as possible? Obviously, Noah Skiro had a really great outing in
Yeah.
game one against Colombia. Like, how much does he factor in? Indigo Diaz had a really great showing as well. Yeah, I think they're definitely gonna have to go through their options there and try to give themselves the best possible chance to meet what their goal was coming into the tournament. Back to Logan Allen there. The face off
Yeah.
at the beginning of the game. I think there was some power in winning that
You can't
stare
lose
down.
those. You cannot
Yeah,
lose them. Like
yeah.
it's
I mean, it's a bad omen, right? Like
yeah.
it's silliness, but at the same time,
Yeah.
it's a touchstone for sure.
Yeah, you want to talk about bad omens. I mean, two rain delays in this game as well. Obviously, we didn't touch on that, but like just unfortunate the way that that plays out. You kind of talked about, as gaming the matchups for them going forward, and that's something that they really didn't do in this game. I think of when they bring in Antoine Jean for James Taillon, who you had a great tweet kind of outlining just how good Taillon was, and obviously Jean comes in and gives up the hit that brings in the run. Um, and it was against righties, right? Like they brought in a lefty to face righties. And then I even think about like Cienfuegos, who is from Laval, who was recruited for Canada for this tournament. And he comes out and he throws, an incredible game, three strikeouts over two and a third perfect innings for Panama. Um, like this is a lefty who just mowed them down, right? Like his kind of innings were so effective. And Canada, like no lineup adjustments. The only time they pinch hit in the game was Tyler Black in the eighth inning for Denzel Clark. But they had a guy like Matt Davidson on the bench who's a righty who has a ton of power, like could kind of change the game with one swing. I mean, kind of from that perspective, like the matchups, like what did you kind of make of them not, you know, kind of getting the most out of like individual situations within the game where, they obviously made so many mistakes and like kind of cost themselves runs, but they didn't really do a lot to kind of make it up on the margins, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, there is going to be some speculation and some like reading of the tea leaves for myself in this assessment. But it does seem like there is like a little bit of rigidity to the
Yeah.
way they're kind of proceeding with things and the way they're operating. It
I think it's fair to say that, yeah.
Yeah, that's the way it appears to me, just from the impression, the outside impression that I've got, from what I've seen from some of the things they've said and just how they're doing things. Like you said, they're not playing the matchups a lot. They're not necessarily going for those, platoon splits and the putting the ideal pitchers in spots to succeed. And that's tough to see, right? Because in such a small sample tournament, you really do need to be capitalizing on every slight advantage that you possibly can. Um, so yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting to see if they do manage to pivot and take a little bit of a different approach going forward. I think that could behoove them potentially, but it's it's hard to predict someone doing that and changing from the pattern they've been behaving in so quickly. I did want to touch on Tyon as well. There, you
Yeah.
mentioned you
Yeah, go
mentioned
ahead.
Tyon, and I think that he performed better than his pitching line read. I thought he did a masterful job. I was really impressed by his performance. I think the line was 3 2/3 and 2 hits, 2 walks, 1 run, 3 Ks, and the edge rate was crazy. He was like spotting his balls really well against right-handed batters. He was absolutely dotting the corner down and away with all the glove side breaking pitches, his cutter and his breaking ball there. Um, and I did know, just because I was really impressed with how many pitches were finding the edge and how few bad pitches he threw. He threw 40 strikes on 58 pitches, and only 4 of the strikes were inside the edge of the zone, which is that's I mean, I was
Good
kind of blown
stuff.
away by that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was very impressive. And he also had a just under a 71% edge rate, which MLB average is 43. So yeah, it was a really impressive display of control and command from Tyon, who's a guy who lives off that right, who lives off not walking batters, and kind of getting outs with more deception and soft contact. So yeah, I thought it was a really wonderful performance from him. Really, great story from Shai Davidi over at sportsnet.ca, about why he chooses to represent Canada in the WBC. His grandmother, coming to Canada post World War II as a refugee, fleeing Hungary and building a life here. Him coming to visit Cornwall area of Ontario in summers with his family. So yeah, really great story from Tyon. Great to see him perform well. It's too bad that the great start went to waste.
Yeah, it's nice to see guys want to play for Canada in this tournament, especially when, it's their right not to play. And, I don't blame, any of the guys who are major leaguers, pursuing big league careers and for prioritizing that and kind of, their long-term future. But it's nice to see a guy who, wants to play for Canada and then pitches the way that he did today. So I'm glad that you brought him up because I was going to kind of ask you to highlight, a positive or two from the game, given, how maybe we spent the first little bit being negative. Also, I wanted to say that the relay from Owen Casey to Otto Lopez to Bo Naylor at the plate, like just an incredible play. Enrique Bradfield Jr. I mean, if you're watching that game, like you're kind of like, oh, that guy's, if you're a Blue Jays fan, you're a little concerned about what he's going to be
Yeah.
going forward. I imagine that he does not get thrown out at home all that often.
Yeah, that was just a tremendously exciting baseball play. Like that is like, one of the most exciting things you can probably see happen on a diamond, right? Whether it's a triple, a guy going first to home, with that kind of speed and a precise relay like that. Yeah, that was like out of your seat kind of stuff. So yeah, Enrique Bradfield, I like right out of the gate on that first bunt single, I was like, yeah, the speed was popping off the screen. I
Even
was
just
really.
the way that he moved in the outfield, I thought.
Oh,
It's like,
yeah. That catch in the second inning, taking the hit away from, I think, was it Tyler O'Neill?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. That, like, yeah, just tremendous movement. Yeah, it was really impressive. Um, yeah, it's just a tough result to swallow, honestly. Like we were saying, coming into this on paper, I think most people probably would have assessed Canada as the better team, but we all know what plays out on paper versus what plays out on dirt and grass over 9 innings is doesn't necessarily equate. So yeah, just missed opportunities.
Especially in a tournament like this and international baseball in general, right? I think they were in kind of this tougher pool where there's no kind of rollover teams and that kind of showed up today. So they'll be back at it on Tuesday. They get tomorrow, a Monday off where Yeah, Cuba and Puerto Rico will play, and then Colombia and Panama will play. Obviously, not super important results, I would say, for Canada. I mean, I guess unless Colombia beats Panama and then takes them kind of out of the 2-2 range, but yeah, will be worth watching. And obviously, the tournament's been very exciting elsewhere. And when Canada comes back, we'll hopefully they're able to pull it all together. They as we said entering the tournament, like they probably have the best roster in this pool. So we'll see for you before we run and kind of close it up here. What's one thing that you want to see from Canada on Tuesday?
I mean, we did discuss them, setting up matchups a little bit better. Obviously, I'd like to see that. Casey moved up in the order, sure. Um, Honestly, maybe just a little bit more discerning plate appearances as well. If
Yeah.
I were to pick out anything else that was, just front of mind. Yeah, maybe a few less, like you were saying, yeah, chasing, like a few less swings at pitches, whether they're out of the zone, whether they're on the edge. Yeah, just, it's the buzzword, but swing decisions. Yeah.
We love swing decisions. We really do. It's so important though. You can joke about it being like a really, bandied about term in baseball, but it really does kind of make the difference for hitters. So for me, I'll say on Tuesday, a Josh Naylor home run. I would like to see Josh Naylor leave the yard down there in Puerto Rico. So
Yeah.
um,
Over a stolen base for sure.
I mean, I guess a single and a double or a single and a stolen base is the same as a double in a roundabout way.
That's fair. That's fair. And I mean, it is fun to watch him do his whole versatile thing. But yeah,
All right. Well, Ian, appreciate you doing this again. You filled in admirably, and we'll definitely have to bring you back on for the show. And really appreciate it. I'll enjoy all your work, everything you do, and thanks again for doing this.
yeah, totally, man. Pleasure always talking ball. Unfortunate circumstances, of course. But yeah, happy to be on. And yeah, it'll be interesting. Like you said, the tournament's so exciting. We saw Darnell Enriquez hit that walk off for Puerto Rico the other day. There's great moments in this tournament, even outside of Canada to tune into. But yeah, it'll be an uphill battle for them to reach their goal.
We'll see how it plays out. That is Ian Finlayson. Thanks again to him for taking the time to join us today. You can follow him on Twitter at Ian Finlayson _. You can find his work at Sportsnet, Jays Nation, and Raptors Republic. That is going to do it for us here tonight at the Bird's Eye View podcast. Make sure to hit the subscribe and like buttons if you're watching on YouTube. If you're listening along on the audio provider of your choice, make sure to drop a follow and review. You can follow the rest of us on Twitter. I am at Worden _Zach. Jori is at Negin-Shecter, and the pod is at BEV _pod. Thanks so much for listening, and enjoy the game on Tuesday.